Excellent. All right, I think we are ready to get started. I do like to start on time. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to this week. I hope the data analysis went really well for everyone. And I think like literally the stuff that we were talking about last week is now like all over Twitter this week. So we were definitely like on top of it very last week. And like everyone is using code interpreter for like literally everything. So very excited to see how people used it this week and sort of and how the analysis looked. Which leads us to our second topic today, which is like technical writing in the context of DeSci. So like DeSci is very different, obviously, from, well, in one way it's different, in one way it's not. I think DeSci offers an opportunity to rethink traditional technical writing. And some of the problems that exist with existing infrastructure is that like you have to do peer review, you have to have a PDF, you have to have 10 pages of PDF. Your cycle time is months, not days or hours. So it could take 6 months for something to get finally published or longer. And it's too much work. It's too much stuff that it becomes, the problem with doing too much is that it becomes impossible to check anything. So when you have 10 pages, you can't then make it so that you can't, it's hard, it makes it so hard for someone to actually verify that it's correct. So what's cool about, well, the reason I'm making such a big point about all this is I see a way in which we could like take this opportunity to rethink some of the stuff, how we do publishing now. And so what does that mean in our context? So, you know, without, obviously there are some downsides now. So if we don't go through a traditional peer review system, why should anyone take the scammy stuff of DeSci and take it seriously? And so we need to, in some ways, make an extra effort to make anything that we do verifiable and to use the blockchain and to use social proof and computation and provenance of data and automatic analysis to prove even to a higher bar that what DeSci is doing is more or equally good than other places. So I think the first thing is keeping it simple and short. So one of the easiest ways in which DeSci can be more effective and more reliable than traditional science is to make the claims and the data extremely short and extremely verifiable, so that it limits the surface area of attack on claims. So I think in this way, making something into a tweet, if possible, or around thinking in those terms, makes it so that, you know, what you're claiming is very, very small. The other thing is targeting a person that actually cares. So this is called the like making it relatable. So one of the problems in traditional science is there is this anonymous peer reviewer that doesn't really care about what you are doing, has no relationship to the subject matter, might have outdated stuff. But in DeSci, we have our peer reviewer, and it does have to be peer reviewed to some extent, but now our peer reviewer is anyone on Twitter, and we know who that person is, and they may have more expertise. So if we make it relatable to them and sort of tag them in the posts, they might have the ability to verify it in a new type of way that doesn't exist in traditional science. And then we also want to make it interesting and funny and make people care about it as well. So what's really cool is with publishing, so what I'm sort of proposing here is like everyone think about how to publish your research in a Twitter thread or a tweet or 10 tweets or linked tweets together. And why this is so cool is that each tweet basically generates a specific UUID. So in the future, somebody could link to that specific tweet where there is a piece of data in that specific tweet or a claim in that specific tweet. So it's very relatable. So it's very trackable. So instead of like when someone references a paper, like there's 10 pages and you're really just referencing like one paragraph or one sentence in a paper, but the granularity of it is just 2 or 3 authors' names and a year. But that doesn't relate to actually what you're trying to do. But when you're doing it on a tweet, you can actually link it to the exact statement that's being made. So you should try and write up. You're free to write your write up in any way, but this presentation is basically like how to do a write up, a technical write up in a Twitter thread, and what would be some of the pros and cons, the benefits of that. So you can also link to data. You can also post your data on IPFS, on DBDAO, lots of other stuff. You can include images, and you can tag people. Here's a really good example I came across. So you guys can click here. He does a really good job of summarizing. He's did analysis on like bird nests, and he did where they build their birds in this, where birds build their nests in a sort of adversarial environment. And he did an excellent job of making it relatable, making it funny, making it interesting, including data, including pictures. And people responded to it really well. As you can see here, it got 10,000 likes and all these different other things. Not that these are like metrics of scientific merit, but I think they are a good proxy for something, info something. So some of the other benefits of distributing on Twitter is people can comment on it, people can retweet it. It's much harder to do this on a PDF, right? Like I read a paper and I write notes in the margin, which is great, but like that doesn't really benefit like society as a whole. People can link to claims down the road with a CID. People can add to it. So if someone finds something in the tweet is something in my published thing that isn't good, they can make a comment on it down the road. I'm not saying that Twitter is the best option, but I'm saying it's probably a pretty good option for us to start the discussion around. And hopefully in the future, there will be other things as well. Also, Twitter gives you distribution automatically in some ways. So, if you post something on archive, it doesn't have any social links to it. You can post your analysis on Code Interpreter. So with Code Interpreter, with ChatGPT, you can generate a link to your analysis, and it just like you click the share button, it generates an anonymous representation of what you did, and you can include that as well. Lastly, I think in a Twitter post, you should include a call to action. So one of the things that's sort of annoying around a PDF is that that's the end of the research. But realistically, like a good research topic should include, a lot of stuff that's been done, but also a lot of questions that come about because of the research, or the ability to include new unknown data that maybe the author didn't yet know about, or other things. So I think a really cool research paper would include, a lot of things that have been done, but then also maybe a call to action to participate by contributing more data, by contributing a counterexample, by getting involved in your next project. Maybe someone is just in love with the author and their way of thinking or whatever. So like including a way to get in touch with, an easy way for that person to get involved in Experiment 2.0. So what we're going to do next week is we're going to workshop our write-ups. So everyone should come with a small tweet thread around the research, and then we will talk about what worked and what didn't work in that, and make a 1 to 2 minute video, do it by noon. Here's the link, it's on the website, and here's the QR code. That's like a 10-minute presentation I just wanted to give. Now, does anyone have any questions? I think this was actually a really good opportunity for people to chat and say like how they're thinking about write-ups in the context of sort of decentralized science. Elijah?
This is a cool concept.
Julian?
Let's use Twitter. Let's give it a
What?
try. So this is a cool concept. Let's use Twitter. Let's give it a try.
Twitter. I mean, I think it's good. I think there are some other things out there, but I think Twitter is probably like has the lowest barrier to entry, which I really, really, really like.
Yeah, like we can do version control in the comments, right?
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. So, and it also gives you distribution too. Like that's a hard thing to do in sometimes in like science is getting the word out. But here you can like tag people, you can tag your authors, yada yada yada. So I think that's like pretty neat.
Is anybody aware of like I'm trying to think of the term, it's escaping me, but like some of the citation metrics and anybody in DSci like coming up with new metrics that measure like social media engagement surrounding like scientific findings or data or like works in progress, that kind of thing?
I know there's like info, it's something called info metrics or something.
It would just be cool to like maybe even track this cohorts or future cohorts, like sort of impact scores or whatever we want to call them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think these are good. I think like the real, yeah, I mean, it's one of many metrics that lead to what is good science. Anybody else? Charles?
Yeah, sorry, what's the question again?
You know, how do you think about publishing in the context of DSci?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't, necessarily thought about this like in the context of DSci, but I have seen it in regards to a lot more of the, just open science and really trying to, as you're saying, move away from the static PDFs to have more interactive interfaces for interacting with papers. I know like Lateral is somewhat working on that. I mean, they're technically a DSci project, but I think no, I think it really does help because of course, depending on who your audience is, of course, usually, if you're publishing, you're usually writing to an academic audience, but then the impact itself might be more for the general public. So that's really where something like Twitter really comes more in handy, because you can go target those people who would probably be more impacted by your work. And then I think there's also like Altmetric, which like tracks social social data regarding how your paper gets shared. So that's also another way of showing the impact beyond just like the simply like a citation count, which might not necessarily grasp all the impact that the paper actually has.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the word, Joel. That's the word, is alt metrics, I think. The other thing I wanted to say is I think there's also might be a bit of a push from going from like, oh, I'm going to put all this work and work in sort of silence for a year, and then publish this like large paper, to more of like a like I would call it like Twitch streaming approach to science, where like you're sort of doing things along the way and making artifacts along the way, and then the final result is less of like a reveal, but sort of like a culmination of stuff that's sort of already known. I could be wrong on this, but that would be a trend of maybe a possible trend of which people are going.
Oh yeah, no, you're like definitely on point. There's like a lot of work on making like micro publications, so trying to get works out a lot faster, especially with the preprints. So like of course people submitting stuff to archive or even bioarchive, just get the work out there, and then eventually if you can get published, but trying to push it out as quick as possible. There's just really no reason to wait till it's that long.
I think DSci is sort of about that, like generating an audience sort of as you go, and that being like an important thing, and making it like interesting and like entertaining. Like I see DSci as sort of like a cooking show or something, where like there could be like a lot of people that enjoy the process of like watching a cooking show but have zero interest in ever cooking it. And like I see like DSci as potentially having that same effect, where like, oh, I want to like follow along with this researcher and see what's happening, but like maybe I'm not going to do it myself, but I'm sort of engaged with the process of it. be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think it's partially because like when you do things like that, like open source software working in public, right, having like composable software, all these things like publishing micro publications, it enables it it makes it easier for competitors to fork, right, and to basically take what you're doing and scoop you. Like if you're a scientist, that's usually the word, like, right, like somebody figures out what you're working on, but they're a bigger lab, they have more resources, and so now, yeah, you might have done like published some cool, like you might have put a cool Twitter thread out, but like now this other lab is going to get a Nature paper because of your finding. So that's, I think, the incentive for a lot of people to keep their work private. I think there has to be, then it's like, there's also the opposite effect where it's like, be the chaos that like, your enemy like doesn't want to see. And it's like, if you can put stuff out in the public, then like it kind of forces them to do it too, especially if they're forking your stuff. Because then like, people kind of want to see that you're generating like a network effect around yourself, around your work, to where it's like harder to disrupt because you kind of do have that inertia, especially if you're getting some sort of like retroactive funding or you're building something, you're getting more of that like direct translation of value along the way, instead of just saving it all up for the end and like having this big reveal. Like I said, like I think that it's a double-edged sword right now where you still have to kind of protect yourself a little bit if you're going to work in public, or at least be willing to be like, yeah, I don't care if you copy me, like let's go,
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right.
Really, really insightful.
All right. So now good discussion. Now we will move on to the videos here. So we are starting with Cannabis
Hi,
DAO.
we are Cannabis DAO. Today, we will share about data analysis in the cannabis research fields. We utilize data on cannabis research obtained from the National Institutes of Health, a major public funder of biomedical research in the United States. Using this data, we conducted 3 analyses with ChatGPT. These analyses were as follows: 1. Total annual funding amount, 2. Average annual funding amount, 3. Total funding amount by state. Each analysis provides crucial metrics for understanding the trends and scale of funding for cannabis research. First, the total annual funding for cannabis research. As shown in the graph, the total amount is increasing year by year. In 2020, it reached $250 million. Second, the average annual funding amount for cannabis research. There is some fluctuation in the graph, but it is generally increasing over the years. In 2020, it exceeded $500,000. Third, the total funding amount for cannabis research by state. As the graph shows, California receives the most. As depicted in the figure, there is a significant disparity between states. In the process of data collection, several issues became apparent. In particular, we were unable to obtain realistic data from researchers, and we were unable to map funding amounts using ChatGPT. These problems indicate that improvements are needed in the methodology of data collection and analysis. Additionally, we collaborated and shared data with other groups. In particular, the insights we gained from Elijah of CGD were very helpful. We take this opportunity to express our gratitude. Thank you very much.
Cool. So,
$500,000.
So, I mean, I'm curious, where did you guys get this? Did it generate the data, or how did this work here?
I was going to ask the same thing. Is that NIH funding? I think maybe.
Total amount of funding per year, total amount of funding per average amount of funding, total amount of funding per year, average amount of funding per year. I don't know what the difference is. Is there a difference? Average funding per project?
Yeah, probably per like.
I see.
Yeah, grant.
Okay, interesting. And total amount of funding by state. Okay, interesting. I mean,
yeah, that's cool. I mean, it kind of does make sense. It's there's definitely some academic research, going on. I know a few academic labs. I didn't, I'm sure they're getting NIH funding.
interesting. Huh. Interesting. Okay, I guess. And then their initial thing was like, their initial question was how we sort of need someone from there. Their initial question was like, how much could DeSci improve the funding outlook?
Right.
And
like it's maybe like, what's the relationship to private funding from here?
Yeah.
Probably.
And here we have is it 600,000? Average amount of funding per year per project? Average funding, is that per project or per total funding? 3.5 times 10, 3 million times 10 to the 1 to the 8 zeros. Interesting. Okay, so.
Right. Is it generating this data or is it pulling it from a source?
Yeah, I guess we need to Cannabis DAO team. We need to know more. We have questions. So we'll hopefully we can have a representative here, or make sure to include some stats here about where the data came from. But it's interesting. Cool. All right. Well, we will move on with HackAge here. Rakan.
Hello, we're HackAge, and the assignment for today was to analyze our data sets. Our data sets had to satisfy certain criteria and contain quantitative data related to kinetic parameters. I used two databases to find suitable data, and to analyze it, I need to have a working pipeline that takes amino acid sequence and substrate data as strings. And from the input, it should infer catalytic efficiency. I spent some time looking for such model, and I found one called PreKCat. And currently, I'm trying to make it run in Google Colab. And I'm using ChatGPT a lot because I'm asking the model to help me explain the code. As my model enzyme, I chose beta-lactamase. It's an enzyme that cleaves beta-lactam ring in antibiotics, making them inactive. And this reaction is very simple and can be measured spectrophotometrically. So I did a preliminary job. I haven't analyzed my data yet, but it's a matter of near future. Thank you.
Okay, so let's see.
And
so
I found one takes amino acid sequence, find suitable
okay,
data.
so you have these two databases.
And to analyze it, I need to have.
Okay, so the protein data is coming from. The protein data is coming from that database, and the substrate data is coming from this other database. Protein ligand. Oh wait, maybe not. Mutation in protein structure.
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
And then you're looking at this catalytic efficiency. Okay. And then the GPT comes in.
And from the input, it should infer catalytic efficiency. I spent some time looking. It should infer as strings. And from the input, it should infer catalytic efficiency. I spent some time looking for such model, and I found one called PreKCat. And currently, I'm trying to make it run in Google Colab. And I'm using ChatGPT a lot because I'm asking the model to help me explain the code. As my model enzyme, I chose beta-lactamase. It's an enzyme that cleaves beta-lactam ring in antibiotics, making them inactive. And this reaction is very simple and can be measured spectrophotometrically. So I did a preliminary job. I haven't analyzed my data yet, but it's a matter of near future. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about that? Darian or Jackson? Julian? All right. Well, we hope you can make it next time, Rakan, and we will move on to
Hello guys, it's Nima from Longlist team, and in this video we are going to talk about how we did the data analysis, what worked for us and what didn't work. We conducted exploratory data analysis and descriptive analysis on our own dataset. We cleaned the data, calculated key summary statistics, performed the basic time series and text analysis, and at last visualized the results with different types of plots. This helped us to understand the trends, patterns, and key players in the investment data. We appreciate how the code interpreter has been a valuable tool for us in analyzing data and generating insightful reports. Its functionality has allowed us to efficiently process and visualize data, enabling us to drive meaningful insights and present them effectively. Suppose that we have more than 15,000 data, including funding rounds, people, companies, and all the nested data around them and under them. So we need the best visualization for this to gain the trends, explore what VCs and what investors are the most active, and what would be the future trend in the space. What didn't for us is about the tool, and it has some limitations. It may not work with large or complex data sets. It doesn't have direct access to external data sources, and it has limited capabilities for specialized analysis and advanced data visualization. For interactive exploration and complex analysis, it's often better to use specialized tools or programming environments that we are going to work on in the next cube. However, the code interpreter can still be a useful starting point for simple data analysis and reporting generation.
Interesting. All right. So let's take a look here. Okay, so
and all the nested data.
Okay, so total investment, infrastructure. Okay, so it did some sort of DeFi. I can't read what that says. Gaming, DAOs. Okay, so it breaks it down by number of investments, total investments. Okay, so this is the amount of money, and this is the number. Okay, so it looks pretty similar, except for CFI seems to have smaller investment per thing, whereas infrastructure gets more money than per investment. Okay, that's cool. And also DeFi, total investment, number of investments. So the number of investments is outsized by the total investment. So DeFi gets less money per project. Interesting. And then total investment and number of investments per category. This is interesting. So what is this tracked by? Category, number of investments, total investments, total investment. Okay, so I mean, this is kind of cool. I think it would be cool to like see if there's any outliers or engage with it a little bit more and ask it sort of some follow-up questions to dig a little deeper here. Would be sort of like an interesting thing, or wondering about that. I'm also wondering about the total size of this data set. So is this 10 projects or 1,000 projects? Just so I can get a sort of a general sense of what the landscape is. Does anyone else have any questions for the long list team?
This is Julian. Maybe I missed this, but one thing that I'm always curious about is kind of who are the investors, I guess. You know, I don't know if I missed this, but like, you know, maybe segmenting between like crypto only funds and kind of hybrid funds and angels or institutions. At least my experience talking to investors is just like there's very different profiles, you know. So that could be another way to cut the data.
Agreed. I think that is a cool idea.
And just touching on Julian's point, I think another interesting one to see as well would be a difference between funding for nonprofits versus for-profits, because you technically would expect more nonprofits, at least in the D-size space, considering how traditionally science has, well, the organizational form science usually sees. So I think that would also be an interesting thing to see is, what's the different amount of funding for for-profits versus nonprofits.
The one other way to cut it, just there's so much, I find this stuff really interesting, would be maybe you put this in here by region, just because like, I don't know, I've had some investor calls recently, and just like the outlook of folks in the US seems different than the outlook of folks in like Asia or something. And it's kind of, it'd be interesting to see how that like waxes and wanes kind of relative to each other.
I like that. I like that. It would be also cool. I mean, it seems like everyone has their own question. I'm wondering if there's a way to make this like more of an interactive thing where I can just like, let's say I'm working on a project on infrastructure, and I want to say like, has anyone else done an infrastructure project on Rust using Web3 or whatever? And then it could ask me, say yes or no, and then I could be like, oh, who's the investor in that? Or maybe someone has already invested in that, they don't want to invest in it again. So maybe who would be a good investor who hasn't yet invested in this space, or something along those lines. But the point being is like, it sounds like we all have very different questions. So maybe it would be cool to have like a chat bot or something that could like answer specific ones. Or maybe people don't want to ask specific questions. They just want to sort of read an article and be more of an observer as opposed to an active participant. Cool. Okay. Cool. Really nice work. Very interesting stuff. I like that a lot. Good job, you guys. Okay, next up, we have Tristan from Research Collective.
Hey, this is Tristan with the Research Collective. I am still in the process of collecting data, honestly. I haven't been able to do a proper analysis, but the surveys I've been working on are more just informative and not really needing substantial analysis, but I've been thinking about how to collect and frame data for the incentivization of trials. I had a good chat with Julian about clinical trial research, and planning on reaching out to some of the other groups in the cohort this week to see about potentially collecting data on the incentivization for whatever they're working on.
Okay. I mean, let's try and get one. Like, I think you can even do analysis on one data point. Like, even if you take your own survey and then do analysis on it, it can sort of, at least in the context of Psi Combinator, it can help you understand what you're looking for and generating a hypothesis, even if it's not like statistically valid. So maybe next week you could, take your own survey and do analysis on it, just so you can sort of generate a hypothesis. Does anyone else have any questions for Tristan? Okay. Julian, do you have anything you want to say?
We had a good chat, and I think it's it was interesting to hear about like the different jurisdictions, because we're kind of focused at Voluntas in the US market, and it's just like so restrictive, but I mean it's like lucrative, right? But yeah, I just didn't know about like these kind of special economic zones and like different ways in which there's more of a ability to innovate, I guess, in other countries. So that was kind of interesting to consider.
Yeah.
Like Honduras, right? Well, that's the one that you're looking at.
Kristen's not here.
Okay, yeah, he was talking about, I think Honduras has like a special economic zone or something, and it's like you still have to get approval, but as opposed to the US, where it's kind of like, I am a nobody. I'm not going to talk to the FDA and convince them to like change what they're doing, right? But in some of these areas, you can actually talk with regulators and say, hey, here's an innovative design. Is this okay? And they'll say, often, yeah, it is. And just much more collaborative, which is cool to hear about.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. We will move on to Joel with future folklore here.
Hey, so Joel here with Future Folklore. Generated some sample synthetic data using GPT of radio data and sightings of aerial phenomena. So this plot shows signal strength and the sightings with the red X's. This one shows both signal strength and then frequency here on the right. You might remember last week I mentioned the importance of the frequency of 1 to 3 gigahertz and specifically 1.6 gigahertz. So again, this is synthetic data, but we want to do a sort of dry run correlating human observations of these things and frequency, strength, and signal. So the question is obviously getting at that correlation. We're going to measure both data streams at the same time and sort of keep the streams partitioned so that you're not watching the radio data and watching the sky at the same time. We want to, of course, measure the baseline radio data noise. We want to know what other possible sources of the frequency might be common in the area, and then maybe use open source data in the future. So again, this is just a sort of dry run using the synthetic data, but the analysis showed a slight tendency for sightings to be associated with higher signal strength, and then sightings being slightly less likely as the frequency itself increases. So interesting stuff here. Jared, the friend of the project I mentioned last week, we've been in touch, and he has some equipment and has already collected some preliminary data, and I look forward to talking more with him and open to ideas that you guys might have. Thanks.
Oh, nice. I like I think it's especially in the context of your project. I think like the synthetic data is pretty interesting. So radio signal strength over time with sighting. Can you explain what this graph is?
Yeah. So again, just to emphasize, this is entirely synthetic, created by GPT. I couldn't quite get Code Interpreter to like merge all these data streams into one plot, so this is just signal strength. So basically, the power of the signal coming into the antenna, theoretically, on the y-axis, and the x-axis is just time, and the red x's are purported moments of sightings of
I see.
anomalous things in the sky. Yeah,
I see. So this is when someone sees something, and this is the radio signal strength for I see. So this is the dBm. So this is the frequency here.
This is the strength.
Or amplitude. It's the strength. Okay.
Yeah. If you go to the next slide, it'll overlay both the signal strength and the frequency. So yeah, that was more just a casualty of GPT.
I see.
Cooperating with me. Yeah.
Frequency. I see. And is there a specific frequency that is more important?
Well, at the recent NASA conference, the Pentagon UFO top dog talked about decades-long patterns in the 1 to 3 gigahertz range, and other independent research groups have found like even more precise frequencies within that range. So we're kind of targeting like 1 to 3, but especially like 1.6 as being some sort of hotspot. No clue why.
Interesting.
But there's other human technology that emits frequencies at or around that range, right? So, we want to try to eliminate as many false positives as we can and see if we can tease out some correlation. So it wouldn't take that much data to, do a more genuine dry run. But, I just wanted to kind of get the analysis pipeline ready here.
Interesting. No, I get what you're saying here. This is very cool. Does anyone else have any questions for Joel? Let's see what other things. Okay, so do unidentified area objects correlate with radio signals in the 1 to 3? Okay, so got it. I think this is like a great DSci question. Like, this is definitely something that is like maybe you point a cell phone towards the sky or have people report it, and it's definitely possible to monitor and look for these types of questions.
Yeah, people can, sort of do a little hacking on their phone to possibly make it radio compatible. Obviously, radio tech is super cheap.
Yeah.
And there's ways to easily share it, I think. So yeah, it's definitely scalable. It's kind of fun. And we're sort of toying with, tech ideas that could be more like mainstream adopted. But yeah, as a science thing, it's very tractable, I think.
Yeah. And hopefully like other sources of, well, I mean, it's hard. It's a little tricky because like the anomaly you're looking for here, you don't want to lose that in the random, like you have an inverted problem here where like the anomalous thing is like you're going to get a lot of noisy data, but the thing you're looking for is also sort of like once in a lifetime and noisy. So it's like the opposite of a machine learning problem.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it could be that like the behavior of, let's say, GPS emitting satellites is predictable in the data, right? Like maybe that's going to be a confounding event, like over and over and over again, possibly. But it could be that the signature of those devices is fairly predictable as it sort of just makes its transit. So I'm just sort of thinking out loud, but
got it. Okay, cool.
I think the more data, the more things like that can be teased out. So yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? Darian or Elijah? Charles? Jackson?
I mean, I'm kind of thinking
No
like in terms of
I think it's really cool though.
Oh, you got everyone at once. Okay,
Yeah, sorry. Go for it, Jackson.
I was just gonna say, no questions. I think it's very cool stuff though.
Okay, thanks.
Elijah?
Yeah, I was gonna say about the hypothesis. Like, it's a tough, like this. I've never heard it described as like a reverse machine learning problem, but it's like the negative data problem. Like, you can measure, but the lack of a signal doesn't prove the the non-existence of something, or like I forgot how my advisor used to phrase it, but it's like you could search and search and search, and you could cross off literally endless things as potential confounding sources, but then like where does it stop, and like what is the boundary there? And so like maybe if it's can we identify like something, if you can identify something in that 1.6, like that's like if that's a thing like that people are looking for, and you're like, well, no, this isn't it, like that's cool, like then it's not that. At least it's not this sort of like endless potential, like negative, like ocean of negative data.
Right.
Yeah, that was also like a non-question, non-comment, but I don't know. It's just I was trying to formulate.
No, it's helpful to hear that fleshed out. Yeah, and I really hope that like in due time, some of this data, like from the defense side, kind of gets classified, because like this range is coming from like Defense Department data reporting on this. Like at the day-long NASA conference on the subject, it came up, and it was interesting to hear it kind of corroborated, because it wasn't the first time that folks have kind of pointed out that frequency range. So yeah, no, I hear you though.
Right. Yeah, if you could somehow disprove something.
Right, and I think it'll be interesting too to kind of just, I don't know, quantify somehow the people's observations too. Like the human side of the data stream here, I didn't really get into, but that's a non-trivial thing. Like, when do you ask somebody to report something? Is it only when they can't like readily identify it themselves? So that's something I haven't really delved into quite enough yet.
Yeah, cool.
Very cool. I like that. Very nice. Nice work, Joel. Digital round of applause. Okay, next up we have Supplement DAO with seeing how they're doing data analysis. Jackson and Darian.
So for this data analysis project, we looked at 5 different supplements. Google.
Uh-oh. Can't hear you guys.
So for this data analysis project, we looked at 5 different supplements, Google Trends to try to gauge the engagement that we could anticipate if we brought these supplements over onto our platform to try to get user experiences related to them. We extracted the data from Google Trends and then visualized using ChatGPT Code Interpreter to visually compare the search engagement over time. Some of the things that didn't work with this project, some supplements that we initially tried to gather trend data on, the trends were too low to meaningfully compare to other supplements that were more popular. But I do think this process could be replicated easily for popular supplements to try to anticipate how much engagement you could potentially see trying to get user experiences based on how often the supplement is searched online. Thank you. Sorry about the audio there.
Yeah, I can't.
Some supplements that we initially tried.
Okay, what?
Basically, the project was trying to ascertain an ability to pull Google Trends data easily for supplements and then be able to track them over time to try to understand what supplements are getting more popular over time and which ones might be getting less popular over time.
So,
and then trying to get user experiences related to the ones that are getting more popular and, try to ride the wave of natural engagement related to them.
got it. I see.
So almost, I guess, trying to build out like a business analytics tool for the DAO to see which supplements might have a lot of interest overall, and then bringing that back to the community.
Yeah. Okay. So, does that mean it's vitamin C? Why is everything green?
Code Interpreter made an interesting choice on that one by making everything green for the visualization, but it's actually vitamin D, most popular.
Oh, this one here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a fair amount of noise, though. Interesting. Is this searching for nootropics or is this searching for supplements?
This was specifically geared towards supplements just because they're more popular overall. Something I had kind of mentioned in the video is that some nootropics are searched so infrequently, it's very difficult to get trend data related to them. Possibly like keywords.
What about like rapamycin or like metformin or I don't know, or like what I don't know what the other caffeine or like I don't know what the most popular like nootropics are.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely search for those. This was more of a building out like a concept to see how easy it would be to grab data and then follow the trends related to it.
I see.
And in theory, like this could be replicated for any supplement using the same. Well, initially we tried to like extract the data using like a Python script and trying to connect to the Google Trends API, but kept getting like too many requests to the server, kept blocking us out. So a way forward for that would be great because then it could be easily replicated for any single supplement that you wanted to look for and track it.
Got it. How does this compare to like like NMN must be like talked about a fair amount on Google, right? Like I don't or no.
What specifically are you asking, I guess?
Oh, like NMN, like aren't like that you're saying those aren't searched for a lot?
Some of the ones that I looked up weren't, but this was just more of a like a proof of concept to try to pull the data.
Got it. Okay.
Track and compare.
Got it. Darian, do you have anything else you wanted to
Yeah, in general, supplements tend to be more popular than nootropics, just because more people seem to be interested in them on a high level. And yeah, as Jackson said, I think it's a good start to figure out how to replicate this with other data points and thinking about who we're going to target when we gather data.
Got it. What do other people feel about this approach of like, I mean, I get what you're doing with like the background research. How do other people feel about this?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Trying to sort for which supplements to primarily focus on. Especially trying to seek participants to take the survey, like that makes a lot of sense. Something additional to this as well could be trying to hit other search engines, for example, like Bing, trying to see if people are also searching for certain supplements there. And then also, if possible, going by region, because certain supplements might be more popular in certain regions. And I'm guessing if you guys are US based, you might look more for people who are searching for things in the US. So I think the approach itself actually makes sense. We're trying to figure out who to target specifically for the survey.
Anyone else? It's a very top-down approach for sure. Elijah, do you have anything you want to add?
Not particularly. I mean, maybe there's like, I mean, when I'm starting to look for things like this, just what comes to mind is, I would wonder if you guys have just asked it, like, or just done like research for what are the lists of the most popular supplements, and I'm thinking about like Amazon or even like Facebook groups. Frankly, like if there's probably a lot of Facebook groups for supplements with like hundreds of thousands of people. I don't know if there's a way to filter through that stuff anyhow. Like anyway.
Yeah. How will you guys know when you found the thing that you want to focus on?
Again, this is trying to figure out some of the most popular overall to kind of get momentum for the platform and the survey participation. So working from something that's, getting an overwhelming large amount of popularity, like you're hitting, let's say 25, 30% of the people who take supplements take this particular supplement. Something like that would be definitely something we'd want to focus on, and then work down towards some of the ones that are a bit more esoteric that might have lower participation.
Got it. Cool. I mean, awesome. I mean, I think the next step is to like go once you've found one, go a little deeper. I mean, I think I get what you guys are doing with like the market approach, and I think maybe at some point you just gotta give it a go, and get a little bit more in the weeds. But interesting to learn about this other approach for sure.
Yeah. Ultimately, we're going to put a website together probably this week or next, and then get like start to establish a Twitter presence and get that survey we talked about last week. So that's all building up to this when we were actually able to better gather data because we're not going to really be able to gather good data until we have a trusted, good looking platform that like people get. So this is research around that.
Got it. I see. Okay, cool. Awesome. Nice. All right. Next up, good job, you guys. We have Charles.
Hi everyone, this is Charles Joe with the District_Framework project, and this is my video for the data analysis meeting. So I pretty much just compared the results that I've gone so far with the DAO index version 0.9 for the DAOs I've read. So I've read 6 DAOs, Bitcoin, MakerDAO, Optimism, Prime DAO, Synthetics, and Uniswap. And so I just made some very quick charts to kind of show the results. Hopefully it's a little bit easier to understand with the charts than just a table. So first of all, this overlay radar charts, and as you can see how every DAO performs given the principal in the DAO index. So overall, all of them performed pretty decently.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But MakerDAO really did the best. And then here's Charlie also showing how every DAO performed per question, but it's really hard to see. And sorry about the visualizations. I've got to work my visualization game. So here's one per principle. Overall, the DAOs did pretty well on information DAO transparency, practicing DAO collateralism, and broad cycle participation, but not very well on the other principles. Here, that's also horizontally.
What was it?
Sorry, I was just asking if it could possibly. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know where that audio came from.
Guys, make sure to listen to your videos before submitting them.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, what were you saying? Okay, so maybe you can just tell us what's happening here.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I think I might have had something else, open at the same time. I apologize. But going on over here, this is my overall radar charts comparing the results for each DAO. So as I probably didn't hear me. So went through 6 DAOs: Bitcoin, Synthetics, MakerDAO, Optimism, Prime DAO, and I already said Bitcoin. We're gonna 6 one, but went through 6 of them, and then here's just a radar charts comparing all the all the results per principle, and there's about 9 principles, and so here are the results for each principle.
Okay, so what is the? Oh, I see. Here we go. So I see Gitcoin. Oh, I see. Got it. So Gitcoin, or no, let's do an orange one. Or MakerDAO has great broad shareholder adoption.
Yeah, broad stakeholder participation.
What was it?
Yeah, broad stakeholder participation.
Yeah, broad
really
stakeholder.
Well in that category.
Yeah, I see. And then, but everyone has terrible cultural patterns and brand.
They actually did pretty well. I just, I kind of realized this, kind of like after I put the video, but I probably should have normalized the scores beforehand.
Got it. Cool. And what's DAO to DAO?
Oh, that's relations between DAOs, seeing they actually work together or not.
And how did you feed this data into? So this was fed into Code Interpreter.
Actually, I didn't use Code Interpreter because I don't actually have access to it right now. And since I already had the data itself, I pretty much just decided to just make the visualizations myself because something else already kind of working on. So I just went and made the visualizations with just Plotly.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Interesting. Okay. Cool. All right. So then we will go here.
Yeah, and so here, this chart didn't really come up very well, but it's pretty much just comparing how every DAO did on each question and seeing their actual results. And as you can see, most of them didn't do very well on most of the questions.
Got it.
All right, and then if we go to the next, and then if we just go to the next one, because it'll make more sense. This one, it's really too hard to read. And then here we can see how every DAO does per principle. And so, the DAOs pretty much did the best on broad stakeholder participation, information DAO transparency, and practicing DAO cooperativism. But in the other categories, it was kind of like lackluster. But I kind of expected them to do very well regarding information DAO transparency since they use mostly Web3 tools. So it was kind of expected that they do well in those categories, and not necessarily in the other ones just yet, because they're still young, so lots of things to work on.
Interesting. I like this. Cool. And where did you get the data from?
Well, I made the data myself, just using the DAO index, which is, just a questionnaire. So, with the DAO index, I just answered the questions by finding sources from the DAO, DAO's own public sources. So it could be in the DAO website, could be in the DAO's wiki, and whatnot. And then
put that together to create a score and eventually visualize it here. And so here's the table just showing all the scores for all the DAOs. As you can see, MakerDAO does the best, PrimeDAO does the worst, and the rest are comparatively around the same. Comparatively all did about the same.
Got it.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily that great, but pretty much everyone did pretty okay.
Got it. Very cool. So I think like a meta level comment for all of these projects is like, for the write up next week, it's gonna be about like, okay, like finding like one or two interesting points to write up about and like back those up with some data. I think here we have like a lot of really great data just sort of in general. And then like the next thing is going to be like, here's the point we're trying to make a little bit more. But yeah, this is good. Anyone else? Joel or Darian or Julian? Comments? Did you try using ChatGPT at all?
No, I mean, I already had the data, so I didn't really have a need to use ChatGPT. Just yet. For a new one, I'll probably give it a try and try to see if it can help me answer some questions. But I already had this data, so I was just like, I'm just gonna visualize it. It's like don't need.
Got it. No, I was just thinking in terms of like free text for like governance documents or anything like that.
Yeah, that's something I do want to try out with ChatGPT.
Okay, got it. Okay, cool. Anyone else? Julian? Elijah? Joel?
How did you, maybe I missed this, but on the cultural patterns, like how did you measure that again?
Yeah. So the way I measure is primarily through a questionnaire, which is comprised of yes/no questions, and on the cultural patterns and brands, I pretty much formulate questions which I think would help inform me of what I at least what describe as cultural patterns and brands. So one of the questions is pretty much like, does a DAO have like a purpose statement? Like, does it state its values?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see if the person's trying to make the DAO itself like independent from the members. So there's so there should be a DAO should have its own identity beyond just who the members are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, cool. All right, next up we have Elijah with Cannabis Genome DAO.
So I'm going to show you an analysis I did over the weekend on the polypharmacological effects of cannabidiol, or CBD. So CBD is known to bind at least 56 different molecular targets, receptors, and enzymes, and various activity. And so I am looking at whether or not these 56 different enzymes and receptors will bind more strongly to other compounds than CBD, and whether or not this CBD is known to bind at least 56 different molecular targets, receptors, and enzymes, and various activity. And so I am looking at whether or not these 56 different enzymes and receptors will bind more strongly to other compounds than CBD, and whether or not this activity in binding and predicted catalytic activity correlates with things like whether they're an agonist or antagonist, where they're expressed, what other downstream signal transduction pathways, potentially disease-related pathways, are related to these things. So I have a few goals. Essentially, I'm trying to find new molecular targets, things that are understudied, but that are predicted to have strong binding affinity or strong catalytic activity with these 56, or any of these 56 proteins. So I've had some early success looking at protein folding, and so here I'll show you a video of the CB1 receptor bound to CBD here. So this is a membrane-bound receptor. You'll see a big barrel structure as it rotates around. So this is bound inside of a membrane and passes the signal through when it binds to CBD. And so I'll just continue modeling these structures, especially ones that don't have experimental evidence, and seeing if I can gain insight there. And so predicting the binding affinity for a few compounds, just this initial first part of the study, looking at CBG, which is a precursor to CBD, cannabidiol, and THC. And so I'm looking at both the CB1 and CB2 receptors' predicted binding strength, as well as two enzymes, the THC synthase and CBD synthase. And so interestingly, the CBD synthase enzyme binds most strongly to THC, which it's not supposed to, or at least synthetically, catalysis-wise. So I'm going to continue probing this data and seeing if I can identify high predicted, strong predicted. That's pretty much it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so it wasn't related to the survey, obviously, because I'm still collecting survey data, but I've been collecting a lot of data for CGD. And this was, this is a way essentially, so the survey is designed to collect people's experiences, right, and track the products that they're consuming, and ultimately link that back to a certificate of analysis that contains the compounds that are in that product. So what I'm doing here is looking at a database of compounds that have been found in cannabis from these COAs, these certificates of analysis. There's about 6,500 compounds in this database. And I am screening them against these 56 known quote unquote CBD receptors, these molecules known to interact with CBD. And I'm looking at this other list of 6,000 plus 6,500 compounds to see if they have stronger binding affinity or strong binding affinity with these quote unquote CBD receptors, and are maybe like don't have pre-existing, citations or evidence of them interacting, right? So if I can predict that these things are interacting, and that they're known to be in cannabis and cannabis products, and maybe I can link that to the surveys later on and say, this is something that we might need to look at these molecules for these particular types of experiences, right? They might be playing a factor in that. So that's kind of like the link back to the survey, but ultimately, that's kind of what I'm looking for, new molecular targets here, and hopefully, I can link it back to the survey or some, disease-related effects of these, the receptors and things that are interacting with these molecules. But yeah, that's kind of what I did. I'm doing this using LabDAO's Plex, so it's like running on Bacalhau and decentralized compute.
Is there a way to link this data to the data that you are going to get from the surveys?
Kind of, yeah. So basically, the idea is that the surveys is describing these effects, and these effects are coming from these molecules that I'm analyzing in this data.
Got it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. What else was I gonna say? It's nice to bring in some external data also into the thing, because then it's just like, okay, what makes this DPSI as opposed to just Psi?
This is just Psi.
Yeah, exactly. But if we could somehow tie this back to a survey or some sort of incentivized data collection, then it's like a little bit more, this is cool because we're innovating in this like new realm, as opposed to data science with an existing data set, which is like interesting, but like it's less in the like realm of like DPSI or
right. I just didn't really have a decentralized data set to work with.
Yeah.
This is something that I can do tangentially related to it.
That's cool. I mean, it's cool. It's still interesting. I mean, that's why I asked the question, is if we could tie this, like, it would be really cool to like tie this data analysis to the other data set that's being collected, and then based on this, give rewards to people that contributed. But I mean, I see, I get the issue of it's hard to collect the data set.
Right. Once I get more COAs of products people are actually consuming, and I can get that list of compounds that are in those products, I can ask if those compounds are present, or things that I'm identifying as potential, new interactions. Right. It's interesting how like you think it's why isn't somebody known this already? Like if it's a compound that's being listed in this product, why don't we know that it's interacting with these molecules? But like the list of 56 CBD receptors, quote unquote, is new. That was just published in April, and it was just a literature review, but it's I think it definitely made a splash because a lot of people definitely are not thinking of CBD as interacting with 56 different things, plus.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just like staring staring us right in the face. It's like people need to look at this, and so once we start getting those experiences in with those, being able to link those COAs, we can say, are these compounds potentially interacting with these known receptors and enzymes that do have effects and evidence of being implicated in various diseases and very important pathways and things.
Got it. And so you're able to model this in silico in computation, sort of which things will interact with which of these 56 other things. And I guess someone who doesn't know a ton about this is like, how well does that validate IRL?
It's getting better, right? So this is using a convoluted neural network model that's come out more in I think it came out 2022. So it's pretty new, and doing it sort of at scale with this many molecules. It's definitely I think a newer data set, and would require experimental validation for sure.
Got it. If you had to give it a really just rule of thumb estimate of like, how well do you think this would translate from the computational model to the what was the word you used?
Like experimental evidence,
to experimental validation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the major problem in drug design, right, and drug discovery is that I think it's really low, but you got to start somewhere, right? And so
got it. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's like another avenue, though. That's another avenue of like, you could generate 50 hypotheses and then incentivize them with, whatever incentive you choose, and then validating things that way.
Right, and this is still pretty exploratory. Like, right, if there was something that if there's a particular receptor enzyme that I think is potentially highly is going to be have a big impact to study, right, to design a drug for it, right? That's where I could get into like designing a new compound or designing the proteins themselves, or seeing if there's some modification that can be done to the protein. I mean, these are human proteins, but that's, I guess, where you get in the realm of synthetic biology, is saying, okay, we have identified targets. How do we modify these things now, either on the plant side or with the drug on the human side or something? Right? If you could give somebody a drug that's targeting something that I've identified here, then that would be like the next step.
So that's another avenue of how you can take this computational stuff and make it into more of a Psi.
Right.
That's like an interesting blend, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Elijah, I'm curious. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I was just saying, this is tangential to the survey and everything, but hopefully informative. But sorry, go for it, Joel.
No, just wondering, as more states legalize recreational cannabis use, are there any mandatory reporting guidelines for farms or whatever the exact term is, like for I don't know, sending in strains or just looking at strength of the strains? Obviously, I have I don't know the right vocabulary to use here, but.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely, yeah, and that's kind of what I'm hoping to collect as part of my survey is these COAs are certificates of analysis. So anything sold on these legal markets, generally, as far as I'm aware, all states have a testing requirement.
Okay.
The testing requirements are pretty much, I think, different for every single state. There's some very basic ones like total yeast and mold count and things like that are pretty standard across all the states, but a lot of them have not all of them require testing for cannabinoid potency. Some of them require going further and testing for other things like terpenes, like common terpenes and their percentages, and reporting that as well on the label. So it varies for sure. But being able to just start getting some of this data and being able to say, okay, this is a verified, certificate of analysis for the product you consumed, and link it to your experience. That's really where we're at with the industry right now.
Got it. Yeah, thanks.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. Good analysis here. Anyone else? Awesome. Okay, cool. So that's all the videos for today. And so I guess on Friday, we'll do like a little bit of a workshop on like the write-up. And I would just encourage people to look around on Twitter and post things in the group chat of like scientific. I mean, they come up on my feed every so often, so I'll do it as well. But of scientific write-ups where people post them and sort of having a discussion in the group chat around like things that are working, things that are not, things that work in those things that don't work. Keep it short, keep it concise, and then the week after we're gonna do like the video presentation, so like sort of like a dress rehearsal for the demo, and then we'll have like one session where we can just like tweak it, like do like a revision, and then we're basically done. So things are quickly moving here towards the finish line. And also, please retweet our thing for call number 2 for Psi Combinator cohort 2. Or if you have people that you want to recommend and encourage them to apply, that would be fantastic. We will very much appreciate that and make that worth your while. And does anyone else have any questions or comments for this session or anything in general? What's working well? What's not working well in Psi Combinator? Is the group chat helpful? Is the group chat not helpful? Do people like the flipped classroom model here?
Group chat's great.
What? Group chat's good? Okay, good.
I give my thumbs up.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I said I give my thumbs up to the group chat. Yeah, no, just I think having that space has been great. There's definitely been points where it's been more active than others, but I think that's the natural ebb and flow. But because we all recognize that we're super busy and want to share a million things, but have to restrain ourselves sometimes.
Yeah. I think it also works well because it's asynchronous a little bit. I mean, I think like I tend to like the synchronous because we can just like all get feedback at the same time. But sometimes with the time zones, it can be a little bit more tricky. Anyone else have a comment on what's working or what's not working? Julian, Jackson, Joel.
I was curious, Michael, if you've had any traction with that kind of media.
Oh yeah,
effort
we are in email touch with 2 reporters, so we'll see how that goes. I mean, I'm still pushing things out, but I mean, we're getting nibbles, so that's good.
Very cool.
But yeah,
Very cool.
And we will launch like a website with everyone's name on it, so that we can get some more publicity around that. I think it's good to get everyone together in one place so that it's like more interesting than just seeing like one project, and people can have more things to do and sort of click around a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I got.
Cool.
I
was just going to say
might be interesting.
the timing of
can you
this
hear me
meeting is a lot more manageable.
Sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
we have Darian and Jackson speaking. Go ahead, Darian, go first, and then Jackson next.
All right, I'll go first alphabetically. Yeah, so I overall, yeah, love the group chat, love the setup, and I think everything was done super well. A possible other format that might be interesting, you know, kind of the way Y Combinator does it is, we kind of had the same assignments for each group, and I know for us, we're not ready to like really gather. We weren't really ready to gather data last week, and our time would have been better spent building up the platform. So another possible approach to this, you know, this is like totally opposite of how this is done, would be to have it less based on individual assignments week to week that are the same for everybody, and more just like reports on, oh, this is what we're building towards, and then just weekly check-ins. So I thought that would be an interesting thing. Just to present.
I agree. I agree and disagree. I think one of the good things is like if you know, but I think a lot of times people don't know what they're going towards. So having like check or sometimes people can just spend like too long on one aspect of the project. So you could just be like doing your hypothesis for like 4 weeks and then like at the end of like I think it's the I mean one of the things that's beneficial about this approach is that like you just kind of like ship it and just go with it and like that's and then leave a couple sessions at the end to tweak whatever's wrong. Yeah, I mean, I think that could work perhaps. It's something to definitely try. I do want people to have like sort of like a final thing by the end of the 8 sessions / 4 weeks. So I don't think there's like, so that's why having the milestones sort of hypothetically leads up to a certain final culmination. But yeah, I mean, it is a, so how does Y Combinator do it? Do they have the same, assignments each week, or do they have people sort of submit a timeline at the beginning and then have people try and stick to it?
It's kind of in the middle. My understanding is they have similar assignments, but not the same. Like it's broad enough that it's like, oh, here's kind of what we're doing this week in terms of you know, think about your marketing plan or whatever, you know.
Got it. I mean, so that's quite similar to this then, like, because obviously like some people are doing botany and some people are doing social science, and like these things are just very different, but like there's a similar like generate a hypothesis. But okay, got it. Okay, good. Yeah, we could do it a different way, have check-ins. I think my worry about that approach is that like people won't really know what to do, but maybe. I mean, these assignments are optional, so like people can submit anything they want. Maybe I can make that more clear, but make the assignment like a suggestion, or build your own assignment if you are so daring, would be another option to leave some flexibility there. Cool. Jackson, good comment though, Darian. Thanks.
Sure.
Jackson.
I was just gonna comment on. I thought the time the total length of the time of this meeting was a lot more manageable.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, we should try and keep it to an hour and a half, I think. Otherwise it does, like 2 hours tends to like have people, and we should try and get it to an hour really, but yeah, I agree.
Can you remind me, Michael, is the last meeting going to be like open to anybody to watch, or is it going to be just like posted publicly, or?
Yeah, we'll do it live. We'll probably do it at Psi NYC. So it'll be like a live Psi NYC event. And you can do it either IRL or video. And then it'll be posted publicly after. Like all the things, basically. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, I thought the overall Psi has been very good. I really did like the the group chat and Telegram. I mean, though I don't that's like post a lot, but I usually lurk a little bit more. So just reading the comments and seeing what everyone's doing is it's actually really nice, and really seeing how engaged and motivated everyone is has been a really nice thing to see. I think really the only thing where I think you could have or it could be a little bit better is just separating out the time between the data collection stage and the data analysis stage. That's because it's especially if for example with Darian's and Jackson's project, they don't have the data already, so like a week is probably not enough time for them really. Unless of course, if regarding like data collection, you could also possibly just say if you don't have enough time, just go grab pre-existing data sets and just do some analysis on that rather than having your own original one. Because at least then it's kind of clear where they're going, and eventually they'll get there, but just they don't necessarily have the time to do it right now.
Yeah, I guess the thought process is you should be able to collect one piece of data given two or 3 days, and then we have a little bit of time. We have an extra session down the road once you've collected the one piece of data and once you've done the analysis on it. We have 3 or 4 more days to go and try and collect more data if possible. But the forcing function here was to get people to get A to Z first, and then refine open up the pipeline later. But really trying to get that one piece of data, even if it's just one data point, really pushing people towards it. I mean, and I know it's a pretty fast turnaround time, you're right. But there is a little bit of time at the end. We have one open session to collect more. And also in the perfect world, that should be a form that has sort of a bit of a life of its own that runs a bit in parallel. It doesn't really happen in practice since someone does have to sort of champion and push it. But the at least the thought process was once that pipeline is created, anyone can just fill it out organically. Now, does that happen in practice? Probably not as much as we would hope, but that was the thought.
I got you. No, that makes perfect sense. And so I didn't know we were going to have another open session where we could collect more data. So I didn't know about
that. I should. There is sort of one thing to basically tweak. Is I think it's a sort of what Darian was talking about is you can do anything. So we have this. This is this right here is session 5, and we have 8, and the next one is the write up, and then sort of the write up / dry run gives you more time to refine any part of the process that wasn't covered before. But yeah, I think we can do a better job of telescoping out what are the future sessions. Cool, great, thank you, Charles. Excellent. Anyone else? Last comment? We'll try and keep it to an hour and a half. All right, good. I think we have a lot of good stuff. Okay. Cool, guys. Excited for next week. Keep using the group chat. Just a couple more sessions here, 3 more. One of them's the demo day. One of them's the dry run, and one of them's a free work session. So final push. Keep going. And yeah, everyone's doing great. So we will chat more on Friday and get the videos in Friday afternoon and link in the chat. Okay, bye you guys.